I've reported in the past that Casio are getting rid of their models that use EL backlights. This means that they've either discontinued them like this DW290, or they've replaced the EL backlight with an LED backlight like this WV59. This means that for those of us that want new watches with EL backlights, we have to look elsewhere other than Casio. So I found this watch on AliExpress, which has an electroluminescent backlight for only $5 US. The question is, just how bad can it be? I have purchased cheap watches from AliExpress before, and the first place that they cut corners is in the packaging. They usually come bubble wrapped without a box, and they take ages to arrive. I was therefore surprised that the AliExpress watch arrived in a box, so they didn't cut any corners in the packaging department. Considering that this watch from a brand called TPW costs the equivalent of $5 US, this was impressive. I did have to pay $2.99 for the postage, but that was a small price to pay considering that it took only a week to arrive. Inside the box you get the watch, the instructions, and even a spare battery. So the initial impressions for the packaging are good. Next we'll look at the design. The TPW is marketed as a women's watch, but at a width of 39mm I would say that it can be worn by both men and women. I would say that the design is one area where they have cut corners, because it's very reminiscent of the Timex Ironman. There are 4 buttons at the sides for the operation, and the one at the front marked with WR 30 meters is just for decoration and doesn't serve a function. In their defense for the design, I would say that they took inspiration from the Timex Ironman and created their own interpretation of it, rather than creating an outright copy of it. Even high-end Swiss watch companies take design inspiration from each other. Think of how many dive watches there are which take inspiration from the Rolex Submariner. The model name for this watch is the K9026, and other varieties are available, all in fun colorways. Now here's some wrist shots. Onto the build quality now, and for a $5 watch I would not expect it to be made of high grade steel with a sapphire crystal, but I would expect it to be robust enough for everyday use. I've been wearing it every day now for a week, and I'm happy to report that it's still in one piece, i.e. the bezel hasn't fallen off and it's still in perfect working order. The case is made of plastic. The blue lower part has a matte finish, and the orange top part, the so-called bezel, has a slightly gloss finish. The print on the face for the buttons operation is very slight, and I expect that it will fade away over time, so I would have preferred it if it was embossed. The dome crystal is made of acrylic and is recessed, and so far hasn't attracted any scratches. The watch gets extra points from me for the LCD display. The big digits are clear and sharp even when viewed straight on, something that Casio hasn't been able to achieve in their latest offerings. Viewing angles are excellent, and the time remains legible even at obtuse angles. The strap is soft and pliable and uses a metal buckle. There's a large number of holes for adjustment and it's very comfortable to wear. On the back is a steel case plate held down by 4 screws, and on it there's a claim for 30 meters of water resistance. I don't have a machine to test out that claim, but if it can survive a few hours in a bucket of water, that's good enough for me. Let's lastly take a look at the features of this watch now, and just like entry-level Casios like the F91W, the TPW comes with a stopwatch and a single daily alarm. Unlike Casios though, which are intuitive to operate and you can figure out how to use without reading the manual, you will need to read the manual for the TPW. As an example, you would never be able to figure out for yourself that to turn on or off the hourly chime, you need to hold down the bottom right button and then hold down the bottom left button. The star feature though is the electroluminescent backlight, which glows an even turquoise colour and stays on for around 2.5 seconds. So far I haven't been able to unearth any areas of the watch where there are signs of obvious cost cutting. The build quality and functions are at least as good or even better than entry-level Casios. So I then decided to open the back to look at the module. I think that inside the case is the only place where you'll see signs of cost cutting. Casio modules are neat in comparison to the one in the TPW, but at least they have made the battery easy to access. Also, it's still nice and dry inside the case despite the soaking I gave the watch earlier on, so the gasket is doing its job well. Despite the low price tag of the TPW K9026, I found it to be a well-built and well-featured digital watch. Even though Casio are phasing out electroluminescent backlights in their watches, it's nice to see other companies still using the technology.